In today's show, we'll talk about the Blazers' loss to the Thunder in a game that showed their identity in more ways than one. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're going to talk about the Blazers' 109-99 loss in Oklahoma City to kick off a 5-game road trip. In the grand scheme of losing by double digits, this was a pretty good game. In the grand scheme of losing by double digits when you're shorthanded, this was a pretty good game. And I think moreover, it showed the Blazers' identity, who they are. Maybe not who they want to be, but who they are currently, warts and all. And obviously some of their strengths in this game as well. So we'll recap that game. We'll talk about why I think this is an identity loss. This is an identity confirming game. And we'll talk about the grind and what's to come and kind of State of the Union check-in to close the show now that the Blazers are through 15 games. But let's do what we do. Fastest recap in the West. Blazers Blazers lose this game 109-99. They led by as many as 10 in the first quarter. OKC did not get going on offense early. Blazers built a little bit of a lead to begin this one. Portland playing without Anthony Simons, without DeAndre Ayton again in this game. Both of them ruled out prior to the game. Ayton was listed as doubtful for the second straight game and did not play. Anthony Simons was listed as questionable and did not play. We'll see if either of those two gentlemen are able to participate on Friday when the Blazers play next in Houston. 10-point lead in the first quarter. They're up 23-21 after one. Low scoring affair. Thunder have 21 points. They're in the grind. This is where the Blazers kind of need to be competitive in these games, and they stay in it, down 44-47 at halftime. And a trend is sort of starting to coalesce by halftime, and that is the Blazers cannot score inside the arc to so help them. At halftime, they were 7 of 17 from three. That's good. That's a really solid shooting night, right? Like you're going to give yourself a chance to win shooting that well. They're 7 of 21 from two. 7 of 21 from two in this game. That'll do it. That is indeed a challenging one. But they're still in it. They're down 3 and they don't go anywhere in the third quarter. They hit 5 more threes. They're down 69-70 heading into the fourth quarter. This is going to be a game. About midway through the third quarter, Scoot Henderson took a knee to the quad and left. And left about midway through the quarter and did not come back with what they're calling a quad contusion, did not return to the game. He was ruled out. It didn't look super bad, but those bruises can be worse the next day. So we'll see what he looks like. Like he didn't go to the back is what I mean by didn't look super bad. He stayed on the bench. They put what presumably was a heating pad on it. And like, it wasn't like he went and hid in the locker room and was getting work done on it. He was watching the game, just like unable to make it happen. Those deep bruises can linger a little bit. That's not great for someone who has to run and jump all the time. But Scoot Henderson not available after the end of the third quarter. But the Blazers still in the game, 69-70 heading into the fourth. And this was a game midway through the fourth quarter. Toumani Camara actually has a bucket on a putback attempt where he's being held by Cason Wallace. He tips the ball in, and they call an and one. He's going to go to the free throw line for another bucket, so that would have, or for another shot that would have had a chance to tie the game. The Thunder challenge it. They say, hey, there's actually no foul. Basket counts, Thunder ball. So the Blazers do not get a chance to challenge it. And basically over the next 90 seconds, the Thunder win the game. So they come out of the challenge, and Jalen Williams hits a 3. Blazers go down and don't score. Isaiah Hartenstein gets a block, and the block leads to a run out, and he gets an alley-oop on the run out. And then the Blazers come down, and Shaedon Sharpe gets fouled, but splits the free throws. He makes a free throw, and the first shot from J-Dub was a pull-up 2. Then they get an alley-oop. Then Shaedon Sharpe splits player free throws, and they come down, and J-Dub hits a right wing 3. Jalen Williams hits a right wing 3, and all of a sudden, Thunder up 7 very quickly from a 1-point game to a 7-point game very, very quickly with a free throw in between. That was about a minute later. At 4:10, Blazers take a timeout. All right. Calm down. Let's calm down. They come out of the break and they generate a pretty good look, and Jeremy Grant just misses it. Like I think they kind of got what they wanted out of that timeout. It just, sometimes you execute the play, but you don't execute the final part of it, which is make the shot. Jeremy Grant misses a 3. Thunder come down, and J-Dub hits another 3, and it's a 10-point game with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left. The Blazers would not get closer than 8 in the final 3:45. They kind of just stiff-armed him for the final 3.5 minutes. From the 5:22 mark to the 3:45 mark is about 90 seconds, a little longer, but a minute 45. They turned a 1-point game into a 10-point game, and then they held the Blazers off, and that's kind of the difference in this one. Blazers lose 109-99. That's your fastest recap in the West. I don't think this was a bad one. I honestly don't. Like, it was a little bit gross. It was a little bit rock fighty. The Blazers, who were 12 of 25 from 3 through the first 3 quarters, like making almost half their threes, were, only hit 3 more threes, but 3 of 13 in the fourth. Some of those were forced late when they were kind of just like chucking them to come back at the very end of the game. But, they hung in the game because they made enough threes and they played really good defense. I thought Tumani's effort on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was great. I thought Rob Williams and Donovan Clingan did a really good job making the middle heart of heart of the paint hard to get into. They sent 2 to the ball a bunch on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they said, we're not going to lose this way. It was a lot of Isaiah Hartenstein, who made his season debut in this game. I mentioned in the preview of this one that the Thunder play small because they didn't have centers. Well, guess what? One of them came back. Chet Holmgren's out till like February, but Isaiah Hartenstein comes and makes his debut, and I thought Ihart, who's I'm a legit fan of, I think he's really good. I thought he was good in this game. 13 points, 14 boards, 3 assists, blocked some shots, 4 blocks. Like, I thought he was legitimately good. I also think he left a ton of points on the board, just missing around the rim. He's never been a really, really high level finisher. His best skill is offensive rebounding and block and passing and blocking shots. Like those are the things that really make him special. The finishing has always been a little bit dicey, and I thought he left a lot of points out there, just missing little push shots and missing shots at the rim. And it's because the Blazers were sending 2 to the ball. They were saying it's not going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I thought that Tumani did a good job in the primary assignment. They had a good plan in terms of playing pressure defense. A couple times, Tumani got caught probably playing pressure too high up the court. He's picking him up in the backcourt, and then Shai gets a step on him, and then all of a sudden you've like created an advantage at 40 feet from the rim. But the Blazers, maybe they shouldn't always live with that, but they do. They're going to live with Tumani doing that. And I think in general, this was, you get a good defensive game, right? You get a good defensive game. You make enough threes to kind of hang around, and you had a chance to get a pretty quality road win with 6 minutes left in the game. I think that's the Blazers' identity. I think that is, in many ways, exactly who they are. Let's talk about more about that and why I believe this is, in many ways, an identity-confirming loss. That's what we'll do in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you about Chime. They want you to take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. You can learn more all about this at chime.com/NBA. Chime helps you make progress with fee-free overdraft up to $200. Your next deposit is applied to that balance. So if you need your extra $200, next time you make a deposit, they will take care of it. You'll pay back what you owe, and it all will be taken care of. Plus, you can get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. There's no monthly fees or maintenance fees, and there's over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. All you got to do is set up a direct deposit in your Chime account, and after a qualifying direct deposit of $200, Chime will notify you to enroll in Spot Me. And with an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 when you exceed your balance, so you don't have to worry about overdrafting. You can get your money, and then Chime will take care of it with no fees on the back end. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges fees or interest for using SpotMe. Make your fall finances a little greener by working towards your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Terms and conditions apply. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. All right. So I mentioned that this is an identity confirming loss. And I do think it is. I think we saw a lot of who the Blazers are, good, bad, and otherwise. Some of the good, I think the centers played well. Like, I think Rob Williams played well. I think Donovan Clingan played pretty well. You know, this wasn't a great Shaedon Sharpe night. There was some issues with handling the ball. He had 6 turnovers, and I think some of that is just Shaedon's taken big strides with his handle, right? Like, I think from year one to now, he is noticeably and significantly better as a ball handler. No doubt about it for me. But he's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He doesn't have that thing on a rope and like is able to, wall everybody off and keep your dribble alive really at a really high level. And is particularly when he gets sped up and attacks, he can get a little loose with the ball. Plus, the Thunder are one of the best turnover-forcing teams in the NBA. They were on a pace earlier this year with historic turnover-forcing pace. And all of that said, the Blazers committed a season-high 24 turnovers. They had 22 turnovers through 3 quarters. They turned the ball over 22 times through 3 quarters, and they were down 1. This is why I said by identity confirming. They're not a team that takes care of the ball very well. Some of that is that they just don't have a ton of ball handlers and a ton of high-level passers. And some of that is just like their half-court offense can get bogged down a little bit, and once you get bogged down and people kind of know you're in trouble, they can tighten up the defense. It is a variety of skill issues that lead to these things. But I didn't think Shaedon was I didn't think this was a terrible Shaedon game by any means. He had 10 of his 21 in the fourth quarter, kind of got going when the Blazers needed him to, and I think he couldn't get them all the way back down the stretch, but he was all right. I thought Scoot Henderson was good in this game. I like the way Scoot Henderson can be. They were really sagging off of him on when he was at the top of the key. They were basically back at the foul line and saying shoot it. And he didn't totally take the bait. Like, he ended up taking 4 threes, but I think more often than not, like, he could have taken a 3 basically every time down the floor. Said, like, basically, this is a wide open shot. I can take it. He didn't take the bait. A lot of times he used that space to his advantage by eating it up a little bit or using passing lanes because you don't have ball pressure. I thought he had a nice game. Again, Scoot, he still turns the ball over 4 times in his 26 minutes before he left with an injury. But when at the end of the game, after he was gone, I think the Blazers were missing him. They were missing his playmaking a little bit. Chauncey Billups was searching for it down the stretch, trying to, whether he wanted to play Delano Banton, who can is better at getting shots up, but kind of only sees the rim, or Denny Avdia, who kind of only sees the rim, but instead of taking jumpers, turbos himself into the paint, kind of without a great plan, or can predetermine some passes in the half court. They both struggle with some sort of predetermination, but in different ways. And Chauncey was just kind of let's see who it can be. I thought Denny actually should have played a little longer in the fourth quarter, but I don't think that was what changed the game necessarily when Chauncey went back to Ben. But they were clearly missing Scoot. I think Tumani was really good in this game. And yet I'm talking he's 14-9 with 2 assists, and he ended up turning the ball over 3 times. I think you saw some good Scoot stuff, some good Shaedon Sharpe stuff, some good Tumani stuff, some good stuff from both centers, and Clingan, who finished with 10 and 9 boards, and Rob Williams, who finished with 4 points and 8 rebounds. And yet the Blazers half-court offense sucked. It just was terrible. According to Cleaning the Glass, the Blazers on shots 2-pointers outside of 4 feet. So that's outside of 4 feet up to the 3-point line. The Blazers went 2 of 18. Those aren't the in vogue shots in the league, right? That's not what every team is hunting is mid-range jumpers. But you do at some point have to make in-between shots. You can't get all the way to the rim, and you can't take only threes. I mean, maybe this, honestly, the Blazers' solution is they were 12 of 25 from three through three quarters. Maybe they should have taken 10 more threes. Like maybe like literally, I don't think like spamming and taking 50 threes is the way for like this particular team's path forward. But on a night like this where they couldn't get, the Thunder really, really clogged the paint and couldn't get all the way to the rim. And with Hartenstein back, they had a real rim protector back there. And the Blazers were shooting pretty well from three. Like maybe taking more of those jumpers is actually the move. One of those, the 2 of 18 from the mid-range was a really nice little pull-up move from Denny Avdia, who's not a mid-range shooter. That's usually the sort of Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons area, and that's neither of them were available. But I think this was an identity-confirming loss. This is who they are. If they're going to stay in games, they're going to hit enough three-pointers to be competitive. That has been a trend all year long. They're 6-9. Only one of their 6 wins. So the other 5, they've hit double-digit threes. They need to make shots to score. I mean, everybody does to some extent, but the Blazers just like aren't a relentless enough rim or free throw type of team to be to win without making some threes, and particularly it's been like shooting with some efficiency. This was a game actually probably an outlier in terms of their efficiency from three without winning a game. But you make enough threes, you play your defense is up to the task, right? Like this is a pretty decent defensive team. They're not one of the elite defensive teams, but they're competitive enough every single night to give themselves a puncher's chance if the shots go in. And the problem is that the shots just don't go in. They're pretty bumpy in the half court. Like they're a pretty rugged half court team. Just not enough creativity in terms of style from the coaching staff and the structure, and just not enough like individual skill creativity to like get quality shots consistently in the half court. Occasionally they can. Occasionally you see Shaedon Sharpe do something really special. I thought he had some moments running pick and roll with Rob Williams where he's just making simple passes that he would not have made a couple years ago. And I thought there was a couple times running pick and roll with Rob Williams where Shaedon Sharpe's handle got a little bit loose and he loses it, trying to gear up from 0 miles an hour to 60 real quick. And the Thunder, who are really good at getting steals, made those plays. This is kind of, I don't know if this is like the formula, right? Because they lose this game and they turn the ball over a cajillion times, but I think this is kind of who they are, right? And by that, I mean, I think we've seen enough of them to know what their challenges are and know what their strengths are. On nights where they make threes, they can win any stinking game possible. On nights when they don't shoot well, it's going to be tough, but they're going to be in games because this is a pretty competitive defensive team. And for the most part, after a pretty rough stretch that ended with, lose 3 straight games by 20 and lose by 45, after a little bumpy stretch a couple weeks ago, it's like they have gotten back to being more consistently competitive. They didn't play very well against the Hawks, but I think the Hawks turned the ball over a bunch, and the Blazers forced a bunch of turnovers and gave themselves an opportunity to win in crunch time, right? Like I think a better team probably builds on a 13-point lead and like runs away with it. And when they came back after the Hawks kind of fell behind and then came all the way back, still found a way to lose. Like it is, maybe a better team beats the Blazers, but the reason that the Blazers were there is because they are competitive on defense. They do not make it easy on folks, and they got a million turnovers. I will say after that Hawks game on Sunday over at Locked On Hawks, Brad Rowland called the third quarter stretch the worst 7 minutes of the Hawks season. It is really fun. I think one of the Blazers' identity things is like they're an existential crisis. Like if you get punked by the Blazers, if you lose to them at this point and probably throughout the whole season, it is an existential crisis for teams, and there's something enjoyable about being like watching this team and watching another group of fans be like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? But the Blazers are grimy. That's how it happens. They are grimy. These dudes get in the muck. They make things gross, and they don't have the skill to get out of the muck themselves. This is who they are. They're a team that's going to need to hit enough threes to hang around. They're going to play enough defense to be competitive, and their half-court offense is going to be a little bit yucky, and it can lead to be having a bunch of turnovers. but their physicality, the way they're a pretty physical team. And I think that shows up in some of their other stats across the board. We've reached the point in the season where I think it's still a small sample size, but I'm more comfortable sharing kind of league ranks because one game isn't going to wildly change things. One game is only going to mildly change your rankings. So let's talk about where the Blazers stand after 15 games. Join me in that third segment, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you about Gametime. It's the place for last-minute tickets. It's a place for tickets in general. It's because Gametime's got all these great features that help you save money when you want to go to events, whether that's sporting events, if you want to go see the Blazers, or concerts, or comedy shows, or live theater, whatever it is. Gametime's going to make it super easy. The app is super easy to use. You pull up the app, you search for what you want to look for, and then on your phone, a picture of the venue is going to pop up. And when you're looking at the venue, you're going to see Gametime picks. You're going to see the little G icon, little green G icon. And those are curated picks that say, if you want to save some money, this is what we recommend. Plus, I like to toggle in the all-in pricing feature, so it shows you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. You're not going to get a convenience fee. You're not going to get sticker shock, say, oh my goodness, this is so much more, because when you're browsing, you know exactly what you pay is what you get. So why not take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime? Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I think this is identity confirming loss. You know who this team is, and through 15 games, I am much more comfortable saying, here's what the numbers suggest, because I think we see it, right? Like a bad half-court team, a competitive defensive team, a team that is not a particularly good shooting group, but on nights when the shots go in, they can literally beat anyone because they're going to keep themselves in the game, and that's kind of what the numbers suggest too. I think generally speaking, the 20-game mark is when people say like, okay, now the numbers are meaningful, like not just like dorks like me, but even just like working in and around the NBA for the decade that I have. I think that's generally the mark where coaches and executives are comfortable saying like, we know what we have at the 20-game mark. Like we know what we have. And next week, once the Blazers play their final game of this trip, or I believe it's Friday, I guess, against the Kings in their first, their second in-season tournament game. We'll be 20 games deep, and maybe we'll check in back after that and say where they are. But I'm pretty comfortable saying that like your eyeballs and these numbers seem to line up pretty good. So here's where the Blazers rank in some meaningful categories through 15 games, courtesy of Cleaning the Glass, the indispensable stats website from Ben Falk. I think this Thunder game, the reason why I say it's an identity game is like they scored, according to Ben Falk, 77. Their offensive rating in the half court in this game was 77.2. So they scored 77 points per 100 possessions based on their half court rating, 9th percentile for a half court game. One of the least efficient half court performances of any team all year long. And boy, did it feel like it, because that's who the Blazers are on the season. They're 29th in offense in terms of points scored per 100 possessions. They're a high turnover team, 29th in turnovers. Their last in effective field goal percentage. They shoot bricks. They turn the ball over. They struggle in the half court. And you've watched them. You know the deal. This is kind of who they are. But on the other end, they're 14th on defense. Slightly above average. You will recall that one of my bold predictions heading into the season that I thought the Blazers would be top 14 in defense at the All-Star break, and then all bets are off after the All-Star break. But to begin the season, this is a competitive defensive team. And one of the reasons they're a competitive defensive team is because Joe Cronin has committed to building a certain type of roster that can defend. When Anthony Simons is back, they are in danger of playing a lot more minutes with, and DeAndre Ayton to some extent too, in the other direction. They're in danger of playing a lot more minutes with like two smaller guards on the court, and then in some cases like two centers at the same time with Klingon and Rob Williams. And both of those lineups will struggle to defend for different reasons. One, because they're too slow, the other because they're too small. But like it is when the lineups are allowed to make sense and they're not like, we have 12 dudes who deserve to play and we're going to like get them on the court, or like we're going to choose this 9 even though this 9 doesn't make sense, but that's kind of the politics of the roster. Then they don't put they don't put multiple negative defender groupings on the court. Like Shaedon Sharp's not a very good defender. Scoot Henderson's a bad defensive player, but Delano Banton, who I do think is actually not very good on defense, is a really good defensive playmaker. He blocked 3 shots tonight. He gets in passing lanes. He is, if nothing else, Banton is active, right, on defense, and he's big, and that helps. It's so much easier to fake the funk when you're a little bit bigger. Denny Avdia is a good defender. Toumani Camara is a good defender. Jeremy Grant has been much better on defense this year than in previous seasons. Donovan Clingan can play defense. Rob Williams is a good defender. When Chris Murray plays a little bit, that's it, by far his best NBA skills, playing defense. Ryan Rupert, while maybe not like this elite shutdown defender, is very interested in being involved in positive defensive plays. Like he competes on defense, even if he has some limitations with sort of strength and like overall team concept stuff. But he gets after it, defends, uses his length. Like he's interested in positive defensive action, and you see that 14th on defense through 15 games. Like this is not one of the elite great defenses in the league, but this is a competitive, above average defense pretty much every night that puts themselves in position to be competitive. Now, the offense is another story. Like I mentioned, this is the worst shooting team in the league, bottom of the league in effective field goal percentage, 29th in turnovers, but they force turnovers. They force the third most turnovers of any team in the league, according to Clean the Glass. Like this is a team that pushes the other way. And while they don't run off of missed shots, they don't run off of live rebounds particularly well, they do run off of steals. When they do fuel their actual pace, they run off of steals. They're 9th in the league in pace to begin the season. Earlier this year, there was a brief period where they had slipped to a below average team in pace, and I was getting worried about them. I was like, oh no, they're slow again. And I don't think they can be, I don't think they're always going to be, I think top 5 in pace is maybe too lofty of a goal, but right where they are, they're 9th right now through 15 games. If they can hover around there, 8 through 11, 8, 9, 10, 11, an above average, top 10-ish team in pace. So they run a little bit more and get out of the half court. And particularly if they're going to be such a high turnover team, like if you force the third most turnovers, running at every opportunity off steals, that is where they're going to thrive. Delano Banton's good in transition. Toumani's good in transition. Denny is excellent in transition. Scoot, in theory, should be good in transition, but I don't think that has come to fruition yet. Shaedon Sharp is pretty darn good in transition. DA, Ant, that's not where they thrive. The other big guys, Donovan Clingan, Rob Williams, that's not where they thrive. But you have a bunch of wings that can get out and run. Go do that. And that's so far they've done it much, much better than they have in the past. That is a step forward because the offense, identity confirming loss. The half-court offense against OKC was a slog, and the half-court offense all season long has been a slog. This is probably just who they are. Their strength on offense, which is their strength a year ago, is that they're 5th in offensive rebounding percentage. They get offensive boards. And against Oklahoma City, they grabbed 40% of the available offensive rebounds. The reason that they were even in this game was that they were grabbing boards. They couldn't make a dang 2 to save their lives. They just could not make 2-pointers in this game. Couldn't finish inside the arc at all. Hung in there because they made threes, but couldn't make the quote unquote theoretically easier shots at the rim. But they grabbed 40% of their available offensive rebounds. This is who they are. They're a team that does not make a lot of shots, but gives themselves extra opportunities. They give some opportunities away with turnovers, and they get them back by forcing turnovers on the other end. 15 games is 20-ish% of the season. Not quite a quarter of the way through. It is not enough to be set in stone. This is who they are. This is who they're going to be. And I don't want to pitch it like this. But we've played enough games and we've seen them enough that I think what you've seen with your eyeballs tends to match up with what these numbers suggest. And I'm pretty comfortable right now sitting here saying, yeah, this is probably what they're going to look like. And quite frankly, 6-9 through 15 games, a nice record. I think they've been pretty enjoyable because of the competitiveness on defense, because of the physicality that they play with, and because you can kind of live with the growing pains of the bricks. If it's like, honestly, quite frankly, for me, if it's Shaedon Sharpe out there making mistakes and Scoot Henderson out there making mistakes, cool. If it's Donovan Clingan out there struggling in the half court, cool. Like that is a team and a group and a direction that I can get behind and enjoy watching. If that changes, and when Anfernee Simons and DeAndre Ayton changes, come back, that is going to change to some extent. And we'll see like what that kind of looks like. Yeah, it might not be as sort of easy to stomach right now, or after that. But right now, I think this is. I kind of feel good about a team that has won 6 of their first 15 games. I kind of feel good about it. Not in like a, the arrow can only point up type of thing, but I think that I think that their warts are believable and not like, not a complete and total failure. And I think some of their strengths are like by virtue of building a team that wants to play a certain way, they have made a team that can play a certain way. Growing out of that is the next step, and that's like probably a much larger year-long process. But I think what they've grown into is something that is at least palatable to watch. And heck, for me, someone who's going to watch every minute of their game and then talk about it into this microphone, palatable is a wonderful step in the right direction. And watching the youngsters learn is just like a much more enjoyable way to consume the Blazers. That is going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's program, Jackson Gatlin is going to join the show, and we're going to talk about the 2 games over the weekend coming up against the Houston Rockets. Blazers go to Houston on Friday and Saturday. Friday night is a cup game. Saturday night's just a regular season game. Doesn't even matter. They're both regular season games. But 2 against Houston, a team, a very good defensive team that has been pretty darn good to begin this season. So we'll look ahead to both those games. Jackson's really good. You're not going to want to miss that show. Come back and watch it. Then come back for 5 more next week, or listen to it if you're an audio listener, however you're doing it. Come back and enjoy the program, however you consume it, and then come back for 5 more next week. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.